Hi guys, I am Ms.Checka. I am fulfilling one of my life dreams by being in front of the Bronte Parsonage, which might not mean anything to you, but it means everything to me. So, first of all, Bronte is a last name. So this is the parsonage where the Bronte family lived. Second of all, parsonage is a particular kind of house. So if you're a parson, it's like being a pastor, a preacher. And as part of the deal, you preach at the church, and then the community gives you a house to live in, the parsonage. And in this case, the parson in question is the dad of the family that I'm super interested in. So back in the 1800s, there was a young couple, Patrick, Maria. They get married, they fall in love, they have 6 kids, they live happily ever after. No, total lie. The mom dies, all right? The mom dies, and the kids end up growing up with this incredibly eccentric childhood, but crazy artistic. So they're left with just their dad, who's a very introverted man. We're in the north of England in a very kind of wild, it's not a wilderness, it's England, but we're kind of out in the middle of nowhere. This is a very small village called Haworth. So they've got introvert dad, their deceased mother's sister comes to take care of them, and they grow up in the house behind me. And it's a beautiful house, but it's small. And for 6 kids to be all crowded into this one house, like, they were basically their own play group, and they were really, really close. So the 2 oldest sisters, Maria and Elizabeth, and some of the other siblings get sent away to a school that was meant for kids who were of the right class to get an education, but not with enough money to really pay for it. And the school had terrible, terrible conditions. Disease spread, and the 2 little girls get picked up after they got sick, but it was too late and they died. So the other 4 siblings grow up with the specter of their 2 older sisters that died when they were kids, incredibly sad. And the remaining siblings are the one son, the brother, Branwell, Charlotte, Emily, and Anne. And all the family's hopes get pinned on the brother, because this is the 1800s, right? So women aren't expected to have a career or really that much of an education. So everything gets pinned on Branwell, and he's going to be the one who's going to grow up and get a really nice university education and have a brilliant career. But meanwhile, all the kids have this incredible creative life. So they write books together when they're kids. They make up secret lands, and they make maps for them. They draw, they paint, they write poetry. The brother is, of course, he's studying art and painting. The sisters are participating in the brother's education, because after the 2 oldest sisters went off to school, the dad wasn't going to let them go to school anymore, so he educated them at home. So they grow up, the brother does get to go to university, and the sisters basically now have to be governesses, because they don't get married very young, and there's no other way for them to make a living. So in order for the brother to have the education that the whole family wants him to have, everybody else has to work. So the sisters further their education by going off to Belgium and learning to speak other languages so that they can be marketable as governesses. The brother does get his education, but never really makes a brilliant career. He ends up working with a wealthy family as the painting tutor, and then has a torrid affair with the wife of his employer. And he thinks that they were in a mad passion affair. She's gonna leave her husband and family, but she just thinks that they're kind of hooking up. So that didn't work out. So he comes home and he becomes a raging alcoholic, and then dies. The other sisters become governesses, they work in schools, but they also clue into the fact that the poetry that they're making is actually really, really good. And they start devoting all of their free time into writing. And inside the house is really interesting, because even though the rooms are small, they have studies, right? So when you walk into the house, on one side you see the father's studies where he would write his sermons, and on the other you would see the dining room table where the siblings would gather and they would write, they would share chapters, they would share poetry, and eventually they decide, well, why don't we get published? So they send off their manuscripts. Charlotte gets rejected 6 times. they can't get published, can't get published. So they start submitting things under men's names. They make up a name, Bell, and then they make up men's names, Kerr Bell, Acton Bell. And those do get published and become these massive bestsellers. So one of the sisters, Charlotte, writes Jane Eyre. Emily writes Wuthering Heights. Agnes writes The Tenant of Wildfell Hall. And these books become smashing successes, and there's all this mystery around, like, who are the Bell siblings? Is it one person who's publishing under different pseudonyms, or are these like multiple people? And then it turns out, the public finds out, like, oh my gosh, it's actually these 3 tiny, super introverted sisters who live way, way, way up in the north of the country. So I would like to say that then they live happily ever after, but actually what happens is that they all die young. Like, they all die in their very, very early 30s or late 20s. Charlotte is the only one who gets married and then almost immediately dies. The one who outlives them all is the dad. So that is the story of the Brontes. I highly encourage you to read any and all of their novels. And that's it. Ms.Checka out.